Oh my God.
The rain came like a curse to the valley. Samuel had seen 40 years of storms, but this one was different. The sky turned gray, then dark, then almost black. The wind pushed against the wagon so hard that the wooden boards seemed to shake apart. Samuel sat on top, holding the leather reins tight, trying to keep the two old oxen moving forward on the muddy road that was no longer a road at all. He was not a young man. His face was brown from the sun. His hands were rough from work. His back hurt from years of pulling and pushing and carrying things that other men did not want to carry. But Samuel was strong in the way that comes from never stopping, from always moving forward even when the land tells you to stay still. The valley stretched out on both sides of him, empty, dusty usually, but now wet and angry with mud. There were no trees here, no buildings, no other people for miles and miles. Just the sound of rain hitting the wagon, hitting his hat, hitting everything. Samuel's wagon was old but sturdy. The wood was gray from weather. The wheels were thick and heavy. In the back sat everything he owned: ropes, tools, blankets, bags of food, water jugs, and other things that a man needs when he lives alone on the edge of nowhere. Behind the wagon walked Mercy. Mercy was a donkey. She was not beautiful. Her fur was gray and matted. Her eyes were dark and tired. But Mercy was honest. She did not complain. She did not run away. She did not judge Samuel for his quiet voice and his sadness. For 7 years, Mercy had walked behind the wagon, carrying what Samuel could not carry, moving when Samuel moved, stopping when Samuel stopped. "Come on, girl," Samuel said to Mercy without turning around. His voice was rough like gravel. "Not far now. We find shelter before the dark comes." But there would be no shelter. Samuel knew this already. His mind was just trying to lie to him, the way tired minds do. The wagon wheels went deeper into the mud. The oxen pulled harder. Samuel felt the heaviness of everything, the weight of the wagon, the weight of the rain, the weight of his own body that was getting older and slower every year. He was thinking about stopping for the night, about finding even a small place under rocks, when he heard something that did not fit. A sound, very small, almost not a sound at all. It came from the left side of the road, from the deep mud that the rain was still filling. Samuel pulled the oxen to a stop. Mercy walked around to stand beside the wagon. Samuel listened. The rain was loud, but underneath the rain there was something else. A cry, thin, weak, like it was coming from very far away, even though Samuel knew it was very close. He climbed down from the wagon. The mud grabbed at his boots immediately, pulling them down like the earth wanted to keep him. Samuel was not a man who moved fast anymore, but he moved now. He walked toward the sound, and Mercy followed. In a deep place in the mud, there was a horse, but not a horse. A foal, a baby horse so small that Samuel could hold it in his 2 hands if he needed to. The foal was covered in mud from its tiny nose to its tiny hooves. Its coat was supposed to be chestnut-colored reddish-brown, but now it looked like the mud itself had tried to swallow it whole. The foal's eyes were open, but they were starting to close. Its breathing was very slow. Samuel stared at the creature for a long moment. In 40 years of living in the wild valleys, he had seen many things die. He had seen them freeze. He had seen them starve. He had seen them just give up because the world was too hard. But he had never seen a foal alone. Horses do not leave their babies. The mother would be nearby, or the foal would not exist. "Where is your mother?" Samuel asked the foal. His voice was still rough, but it was softer now. The foal did not answer, because foals do not talk to men. It just lay in the mud and struggled a little bit less with each breath. Samuel looked at Mercy. The old donkey looked at the foal, and Mercy looked at Samuel. In her dark eyes, Samuel saw something he had not seen in a long time, a kind of knowing, a kind of purpose. Samuel bent down slowly, his old knees complaining. He reached into the mud and found the foal's body. It was warm still, but not for much longer. He lifted it carefully, and the foal made one more small sound. Samuel held the tiny creature against his chest, feeling its heartbeat, feeling how thin it was, how close it was to disappearing. He walked back to the wagon with Mercy following close. He climbed up into the wagon bed, slower than usual, because he was holding the foal, and he laid the baby horse down on top of a pile of blankets. The blankets were rough and old, but they were dry. That was something. Mercy jumped into the wagon without being asked. She was too old to jump, but she did it anyway. The old donkey walked over to where the foal lay, and she stood over it like she was building a wall between the foal and the rest of the world. Samuel covered the foal with more blankets. He poured water from one of his jugs into a cup and gently poured a little into the foal's mouth. The creature swallowed once, twice. "What are you?" Samuel whispered, and he did not know if he was asking the foal or asking himself. Outside, the rain continued to fall. The valley continued to be empty. The darkness continued to come. Samuel sat in the wagon bed next to the foal, next to Mercy, and he waited. He waited for the baby horse to live or die. He did not know which one he wanted more, but Mercy knew. The old donkey stood guard. She did not move. She did not close her eyes. And Samuel, for the first time in many years, was not alone in the darkness.
The foal did not wake up for 2 days. Samuel sat in the wagon bed and watched it breathe. In and out. In and out. Sometimes the breathing was so slow that Samuel had to lean down and feel the warmth of the foal's nose to know that it was still alive. The tiny horse lay on the blankets without moving. Its coat was still wet and muddy. Samuel wanted to clean it, but he was afraid that moving the foal would make it stop breathing altogether. Mercy stood guard like a soldier. She did not eat. She did not drink much. She just stood over the foal with her old legs spread wide, as if she could protect the baby horse from death itself by standing in the way. Samuel looked at his donkey and wondered what she saw in the foal. Why did she care so much? Mercy was old. She had lost her purpose years ago. Samuel kept her only because he could not make himself sell her or send her away. Now here was Mercy, using the last of her strength to protect a creature that she had never met before the rain came. On the third morning, the foal's body became hot. Samuel touched the foal's neck and pulled his hand back fast. Fever. He knew fever. He had seen it before. Fever was the thing that came after danger. It came when the body was fighting something it could not see. Samuel had no doctor to call. There was no town close enough. There was only Samuel and Mercy and a small foal that was running out of time. He went to work with the things he had. Samuel filled a bucket with rainwater from outside the wagon. He tore one of his own blankets into strips. He dipped the cloth strips in the cold water and laid them on the foal's body. The foal's eyes opened for just a moment, not seeing anything, just opening, then closed again. Samuel worked through the morning, changing the wet cloths every few minutes. His hands were never still. From his bags he found dried plants that his mother had taught him about 50 years ago. She was dead now, but her knowledge was still alive in his memory. He crushed the plants and mixed them with water, then slowly poured the liquid into the foal's mouth. The foal swallowed, or sometimes did not swallow, and Samuel could not tell if it was helping or hurting. Mercy watched everything. Sometimes the old donkey would nudge Samuel's arm with her nose, as if to say, "You are doing the right thing. Keep going. Do not stop." On the fourth day, a visitor came to the ranch. Samuel heard the horse before he saw it. The sound of hooves on the muddy ground came closer and closer. Samuel was inside the barn, getting more water and more cloth strips. He came out and saw Thomas, a neighbor who lived 3 miles down the valley. Thomas was an old man too, but harder than Samuel. His face was burned dark from the sun. His eyes were the color of stones. He did not smile much. "Samuel," Thomas called out. "I came to see if you made it through the storm." "I made it," Samuel said. He was already moving back toward the wagon. Thomas followed him. He saw Mercy first, standing in the wagon bed like she was the only thing holding up the sky. Then he saw the foal. "That a foal?" Thomas asked. "Yes," Samuel said. "Where'd it come from?" "Found it in the mud during the storm," Samuel said. He was not a man who explained things. He just said what was true and left it there. Thomas walked around the wagon slowly. He looked at the foal lying still and hot on the blankets. He looked at Mercy standing guard. He looked at Samuel with his wet hair and his tired eyes and his hands that had not stopped working for 3 days. "It won't make it," Thomas said. His voice was not mean. It was just fact, the way he saw it. "Foals without mothers don't make it. The land doesn't allow it. The land takes what it needs to take." Samuel did not argue. Arguments were a waste of breath. He just turned back to the foal and started changing the cloths again. "You're wasting your time," Thomas said. "And your resources." But Samuel did not stop. He did not even answer. He just kept working. Thomas watched for a little while longer, then he got back on his horse and rode away. Samuel heard him call out once, "Bury it deep when it goes," but then the sound of the hooves faded into the distance. That night was the worst night. The foal's fever climbed higher. The baby horse started to shake. Its breathing became fast and broken, like it was running from something even while lying still. Samuel sat beside it all through the dark hours, changing watercloths, trying to cool the fire that was burning inside the tiny body. Mercy never moved. She was like a statue made from stone and loyalty. Around the middle of the night, when Samuel's eyes were so tired they could barely stay open, something changed inside his own chest. Samuel was not a man who cried. He had been hurt too much in his life. He had lost his wife to sickness. He had lost his son to anger and pride. He had lost so many things that crying seemed like a waste of tears. But sitting there in the darkness with a foal that was probably going to die, with a donkey that loved more than any living creature deserved to love, something broke open inside him. His shoulders shook. His breath came in loud sounds that scared the darkness. Tears came down his face, and he did not stop them. All the sadness that he had locked away for so many years came pouring out. For his wife. For his son. For all the lonely nights he had spent alone in empty valleys. And the foal fought. Even as Samuel cried, even as his grief poured out like a flood, the tiny horse's breathing changed. It became slower. Deeper. As if Samuel's sorrow was pulling the foal back from the edge of death. The fever was still there. The danger was not gone. But something shifted. The foal was not giving up. Samuel wiped his eyes with his dirty sleeve. He looked at Mercy. The old donkey looked back at him, and Samuel understood something true. They were not alone anymore. The three of them, the broken man, the old donkey, and the tiny horse, they had found each other in the storm. And none of them would let the others fall into the darkness. Not tonight. Not ever. Samuel changed the cloths one more time and waited for the dawn. The foal lived. On the 7th day, its eyes opened and stayed open. On the 9th day, it tried to stand. Its legs were thin like branches, shaking and uncertain, but the foal wanted to move. Samuel helped it up, holding it gently while Mercy watched with approval in her dark eyes. The baby horse took 2 steps and fell. Then 3 steps and fell again. But each time, it got back up. Each time, it tried again. The fever had broken 3 days ago. Now Samuel changed the bandages not because the foal was dying, but because it was healing. There was a difference between these two things, and Samuel could feel it in his bones. By the 2nd week, the foal could walk around the wagon bed. It was a small space, but it was enough. Samuel had given the foal a name, Star, because of the white mark on its forehead that looked like a star burning in the night sky. Mercy had approved of the name. Samuel could tell because the old donkey finally lay down to sleep, letting her guard drop a little bit. Samuel began taking Star on small walks around the ranch. The valley was still wet from the rain, but it was getting drier. The mud was turning back into earth. The sky was starting to show blue between the gray clouds. Samuel would hold Star close to his body, feeling how the foal's legs grew stronger each day. He would walk out past the barn, past the fence, out toward the open land where nothing grew except grass and stones. Mercy always followed. The old donkey never stayed far from Star, as if she was still afraid that the baby horse might disappear if she looked away too long. On one of these walks, Samuel went back to check the wagon. He needed to organize his supplies. Some things had gotten wet during the storm. Some things had been moved when he was taking care of Star. Samuel climbed into the wagon bed and started moving bags and boxes, putting things in better order. He was thinking about nothing important, just the work of his hands, when his foot pushed against something that should not have moved. The floorboards. Samuel had owned this wagon for 15 years. He knew every board, every nail, every place where the wood was starting to rot. But this board, the one near the back left corner, moved when he pushed it. It was loose. Samuel stared at it for a long moment, not understanding. He bent down and pulled the board up. There was a space underneath. Not a big space, but enough for a man to hide something if he wanted it hidden very badly. And in that space were pouches. Old leather pouches, wrapped in cloth that was turning to dust with age. Samuel pulled one out slowly, carefully, as if it might break apart in his hands. He opened it. Gold coins. Samuel had never held many gold coins in his life. He knew what they looked like from the few times he had been to town, but he had never owned them. These coins were old and worn, marked with dates and faces that he did not recognize. His hands were shaking now. Not from fear, but from confusion. From a kind of remembering that his mind did not want to accept. He pulled out pouch after pouch. 5 of them. Then 6. Each one heavy with coins. Each one wrapped carefully, preserved like they were the most important things in the world. Samuel sat back on his heels and stared at the gold. His mind moved backward through time. 7 years ago. He had been in a different place, a different ranch, a different life. He had been hired to work for a man named Harlow who was rich but not honest. Samuel had worked there for 1 year, and during that year, Harlow had been robbed by bandits. They had stolen his gold, his money, everything of value. Harlow had been angry like a storm. He had said terrible things. He had blamed everyone, even the servants who had no part in the robbery. Samuel had left that place. He had taken his old donkey, Mercy, who had belonged to Harlow, and he had just started walking. He had not planned to steal. He had just wanted to leave. But somehow, when he left, this wagon was loaded with his few things. He had never looked underneath the boards. He had never wondered why the wagon was so heavy for so few belongings. Now he understood. Mercy had known. Somehow, that old donkey had known that the gold was there, hidden from the man who owned it, protected by the one creature that Harlow had never appreciated. Samuel looked out of the wagon and saw Mercy standing in the sunlight, her old gray fur turning silver in the brightness. The donkey was looking at Star, watching the foal walk and grow stronger. "You carried this for 7 years," Samuel said aloud, speaking to Mercy like she could answer him. "You carried this gold that was not yours to carry. You brought it to me. You protected it." Mercy did not turn around, but her ears moved slightly, listening. Samuel looked back at the gold coins. His mind was full of questions and no answers. What was he supposed to do with this? Harlow might still be alive. The gold was not his. It belonged to a man who had been cruel and unjust, but it still was not Samuel's to keep. He wrapped the pouches carefully, the way they had been wrapped before. He placed them back under the floorboards. He fitted the board back into place so that no one would know it had ever been moved. But everything was different now. Samuel climbed out of the wagon and walked to where Star stood with Mercy. The foal was strong enough now that it did not need to be held all the time. It could stand on its own 4 legs. It could walk and run, even though it was still very young and very small. Samuel put his hand on Star's back. He felt the warmth of the living creature under his palm. He felt the beating of a heart that had almost stopped, but had chosen to keep going. "You were sent to me," Samuel said quietly. "Not by accident. Not by the storm." He looked at Mercy. The old donkey looked back. "You brought me here," Samuel continued. "To this place. You were waiting for me to understand. You were waiting for me to find what was underneath." Samuel did not know why Mercy had carried the gold. He did not know if she had done it on purpose or if it was just something that happened. But he knew this: the donkey had protected the gold, protected Samuel, and now protected Star, all with a loyalty that asked for nothing in return. The sun was getting lower in the sky. The valley was turning golden with evening light. Samuel stood between his donkey and his foal, and he felt something that he thought had died years ago. He felt hope. He felt the possibility that secrets, when revealed, could change everything. That a broken man could be put back together. That an old donkey could be a guardian of more than just things, but of dreams and futures and second chances. Samuel looked at the wagon behind him, at the hidden gold underneath the boards, at the mystery of how it all came to be. Then he turned back to Star and Mercy, and he made a quiet promise to himself. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The three of them. The forgotten man, the faithful donkey, and the foal that should have died but chose to live. And the gold would wait, hidden and patient, for Samuel to understand what it truly meant. 3 months passed. Star was no longer a tiny foal that needed to be held. The baby horse had grown. Not fully grown, but strong. Its legs were no longer shaking. Its coat was clean and shiny, a beautiful chestnut color that caught the sunlight. The white star on its forehead seemed to shine brighter every day. Mercy watched over Star like the old donkey had finally found her true purpose in life. Samuel's ranch was becoming known in the valley. The first person to notice Star was a traveling merchant who came through looking for supplies. He saw the foal running in the open field, jumping and playing with pure joy. The merchant stopped his horse and just watched for a long time. Then he rode to Samuel's door. "That's the finest foal I've ever seen," the merchant said. "Where did you get it?" Samuel did not like to talk about his business, but the merchant kept asking. So Samuel told him the story. About the storm. About finding Star in the mud. About how the foal should have died but did not. About Mercy standing guard through the fever. The merchant rode away, but not before saying, "That's a miracle horse if I ever saw one." By the next week, other people started coming. A farmer from 5 miles away brought his wife to see Star. Then came a young boy who had heard the story from his father. Then came an old woman who said she had lost a foal once, and she wanted to see this one that had lived. They all stood at the fence and watched Star run and play and live. "It's blessed," the old woman said, tears in her eyes. "That horse is blessed by God." Samuel did not know if Star was blessed. He only knew that the foal had wanted to live, and he had wanted to help it live. That seemed like enough to him. But the people kept coming. More every week. They called Star the miracle horse. They told the story to others. The story grew bigger and bigger, changing in the telling, becoming something more than what really happened. And then came the harder men. The first one rode up on a horse that was too clean, too well-fed. His clothes were too fine for a man of the valley. He had a gun on his hip and a smile on his face that did not reach his eyes. "Samuel," the man said, not as a greeting but as a statement. "I've heard about your horse." "It's a foal," Samuel said. He was standing by the fence, watching Star eat from his hand. "Worth a lot of money, I imagine," the man continued. "A horse like that. A miracle horse. Rich people in the city would pay good money for something like that. Very good money." Samuel did not answer. He turned back to Star and kept feeding the foal. "I represent a buyer," the man said. "A man with a lot of money. He wants to make you an offer. A real good offer. Enough to let you stop working, stop worrying. You could live easy for the rest of your life. No, Samuel said. You haven't even heard the number, the man said. I don't need to hear it, Samuel said. Star is not for sale. The man rode away, but Samuel knew he would come back. Men like that always came back. The second visitor came 3 days later. This one was different. He wore the clothes of a banker, fancy and pressed. He did not have a gun on his hip, but Samuel could tell he was dangerous in a different way. This man knew how to use words like weapons. Samuel, the banker said, tipping his hat. I'm not here to buy your horse. I'm here about something else. Something very important. Samuel waited. Harlow, the banker said. The name fell into the quiet like a stone into still water. You know that name, don't you? Harlow, who owned the big ranch to the east. Harlow, who was robbed of his fortune by bandits 7 years ago. Samuel's hands became fists. Harlow died 2 years ago, the banker continued. But before he died, he made me the holder of his will. He left instructions to find his gold. He left money to search for it. He believed that someone had taken it, or hidden it, or knew where it was. I don't know anything, Samuel said. I think you do, the banker said. I think you know a lot. I think you might even have something that belongs to my dead client's estate. The law says that if you do have something that belongs to Harlow, you need to return it. The law is very clear on that point. And if I don't? Samuel asked. The banker smiled. Then I bring the authorities. They search your property. They search your wagon. They find what's hidden. And then you go to prison for stealing. You lose everything. The ranch. The horse. Everything. Samuel looked at the banker for a long moment. Then he looked back at Star, who was playing in the field with Mercy walking beside her. Give me time, Samuel said finally. You have 1 week, the banker said. He turned his horse and rode away. That night Samuel sat in the darkness outside his barn and thought about everything. The gold was not his. He had always known that. But now he understood something else. Keeping it hidden meant he could never have peace. Men would keep coming. The banker's threat was real. They would search the wagon. They would find the pouches. And even though Samuel was an old man who had done nothing wrong in a very long time, the law did not care about what was right. The law cared about what belonged to whom. Mercy came and stood beside him in the darkness. The old donkey rested her head against Samuel's shoulder. You knew this would happen, Samuel said to Mercy. You knew that someday I would have to face what you brought me. Didn't you, old girl? Mercy did not answer, but she stood there through the night, keeping Samuel company while he thought about impossible choices. By morning, Samuel had made a decision. It was not a good decision, or a bad decision. It was just the only decision that let him sleep at night, while keeping Star safe. It was the only decision that honored what Mercy had protected all these years. The gold would have to go back. But not to the banker. Not to the dead man's estate. Samuel would return it the way it was meant to be returned, not through the law, but through understanding. Through knowing what was right and doing it, even when it cost him everything. He looked at Star running in the morning light. The foal was free and alive and beautiful. That was what mattered. That was worth more than all the gold in the world. Samuel stood up slowly and walked toward the wagon. He had 1 week to figure out how to give back what was not his, while keeping safe the one thing that was, the bond between a man, a donkey, and the miracle horse that had changed everything. The week passed like Samuel was living in a dream. He did not sleep much. He spent his days watching Star grow stronger, watching Mercy stand guard over the foal, and thinking about the choice he had made. The gold was still hidden under the wagon boards. The banker would return soon. The threat was real and growing heavier every day. On the 5th day, Samuel rode into town. It was a small town, dusty and ordinary, with a few buildings made from wood and stone. There was a store, a church, a sheriff's office, and a saloon. Samuel had not been to town in many months. He went directly to the church and asked for the priest. Father Miguel was an old man, older than Samuel, with kind eyes and a voice like slow water. Samuel sat across from him in the simple room and told him everything. Not in confession, but as a man talking to another man. He told Father Miguel about Harlow. About the robbery. About the gold hidden in the wagon. About how he had not stolen it on purpose, but had carried it for 7 years without knowing. He told the priest about Star and Mercy and the miracle of survival in the storm. "The banker says the gold belongs to Harlow's estate," Samuel said. "But Harlow was a cruel man. He hurt people. The gold came from his cruelty. I don't know if returning it to his dead body's money would be right. But keeping it hidden is also not right." Father Miguel listened without interrupting. When Samuel finished, the old priest sat back in his chair. "There is a way," Father Miguel said slowly. "A way that honors both the truth and what is right in your heart." By the next morning, everyone in town was talking. The story spread like wind through the valley. Samuel had brought the gold, all of it, every pouch, to the church. Not to keep, but to use for the town. For the poor. For the widows who could not farm their land. For the sick people who had no money for medicine. For children who had no shoes. The banker arrived 2 days later, angry and red-faced. "That gold belongs to Harlow's estate," he shouted at Samuel in front of the church. "You had no right to give it away. That's theft. That's criminal." "I gave it to the church," Samuel said calmly. "The church can decide what to do with it. If you want it, you will have to argue with the priest. And with God." The banker looked at the church. He looked at Father Miguel standing in the doorway with a peaceful smile. He looked at all the people of the town standing behind Samuel, the farmers, the shopkeepers, the old woman who had lost a foal, the young boy whose father had told him about the miracle horse. "The law," the banker started. "The law says I stole it," Samuel interrupted. "But the law does not say where it came from or why I kept it. The law does not know the storm. The law does not know Mercy. The law does not know Star. The law only knows paper and numbers. I choose to know what is in my heart." The banker left town that day. He never came back. But the story spread further. Men came from the city. Men with cameras and notebooks. They wanted to see the miracle horse. They wanted to talk to Samuel. They wanted to write down the story and put it in newspapers. Samuel let them see Star, but he did not let them change the truth of what happened. "It is not a miracle that the foal lived," Samuel told the newspaper men. "It is love. It is a choice to care when caring is hard. It is an old donkey who knew loyalty better than any person I have ever met." The newspaper men wrote their stories anyway. Some said it was a miracle. Some said it was the hand of God. Some said it was just luck. But everyone agreed on one thing: the story was beautiful. The story meant something. People came from far away just to see Star. The foal that should have died was now famous. Artists came to paint pictures of the horse. Photographers came to make pictures with their cameras. Samuel never charged anyone to see Star. He just let them look and listen while he told the story of the storm. 1 year passed. Star was no longer a foal. The young horse was beautiful now, strong and graceful, with a coat like shining copper and a white star that seemed to glow on its forehead. Mercy was older, and her legs moved slower, but the old donkey still stood guard. She would not leave Star's side. She would not let anyone ride the horse or take it away. "Mercy knows," Father Miguel said to Samuel one day. They were standing by the fence, watching Star run. "The donkey knows that this horse is sacred. She knows that Star is not meant to be owned or ridden. Star is meant to be free and to remind people of what is possible." Samuel nodded. He had come to understand this himself. The gold was almost gone now. Father Miguel and the town council had used it carefully. They had built a school. They had helped families who lost their homes in fire. They had brought a doctor from the city to live in town. They had planted trees on the empty land. Slowly, the valley was becoming less harsh, less lonely, more full of hope. And it all started with a tiny foal in the mud. On a quiet evening, as the sun was turning the sky orange and purple, Samuel sat on his porch. Mercy lay at his feet, sleeping peacefully for the first time in years. Star stood in the field, silhouetted against the dying light, a horse-shaped shadow that somehow looked bigger and more important than any real horse could be. Samuel thought about all the choices he had made. To stop the wagon in the storm. To lift the foal from the mud. To sit with it through the fever. To discover the gold. To let it go. To choose love over possession. Was it the right choice? He asked Mercy, even though the old donkey was sleeping. In his heart, Samuel knew the answer. The right choice was not the one that made him rich. The right choice was the one that let him sleep at night. The right choice was the one that honored the bond between living creatures. The right choice was the one that made other people believe that miracles were possible. A young rider came up the road on a tired horse. Samuel recognized him as one of the ranch hands from the next valley over. The young man dismounted and walked to the fence. "Samuel," the young man said, "I came to see the horse. The one they call the miracle horse. My mother told me the story. She said I should come here and see what is possible. She said it would change how I understand the world." Samuel stood up slowly, his old knees creaking. He walked to where the young man stood and pointed to Star. "There she is," Samuel said. "Not a miracle, but something better. She is proof that if you choose love over fear, if you choose action over giving up, if you choose to care even when it is hard, then the world becomes more beautiful. Not because magic happened, but because you decided to make it beautiful." The young man stared at Star for a long time without speaking. Mercy opened one eye and looked at Samuel, as if approving of what he had said. And in that moment, as the sun finished setting and the stars began to appear in the sky, Samuel understood the full truth. The gold had not been the treasure. The treasure was this: a man who learned to love again, a donkey who taught loyalty without words, and a foal that should have died but chose to live. The legend of the miracle horse would last long after Samuel was gone. People would tell the story to their children. They would bring their own broken things, their broken hearts, their broken hopes, and they would stand at the fence and look at Star and remember that survival is possible. That love matters. That an old man and an old donkey and a tiny foal could change the world. Not with gold. Not with magic. But with simple, powerful, unbreakable loyalty. That was the real miracle. That was the real legend. And it began in the mud, on a rainy night, when one man chose to stop and care.